Hi guys, this is Josh from Pomeroy Creative, and you're watching another video about Google Drawings. I took a poll on my Google Plus page and asking what you would like to see more content about, and I've got quite a few responses on Google Drawings, and Google Drawings has been pretty popular topic in my world. I've been using it quite a bit and just experimenting with it and seeing how much I can push it to create creative and interesting things. And this video, I would like to share with you more of that process, but also more of a tutorial on my particular techniques and, and process going about creating an illustration in Google Drawings. So let's jump over to my Google Drive folder here, and I'm just in my illustration folder, and I'm just going to hit Shift D to create a new drawing document. And what I usually do, first of all, is just click up here and give it a name. And this is going to be a bowl illustration. And I'm not too worried about the actual document size at this point. I'm just going to give it a solid white background by right-clicking under. You right-click anywhere. It can be on the canvas, off the canvas. And under that drop-down, I select background, and then you get your color options. I have an image copied on the clipboard, and I'm going to go ahead and try to paste it in here. Hopefully it's not too big. I have had some issues with pasting in large, very large images into Google Drawings. If you have really big images, the best way to get them in here is to use the Insert menu, choose Image, and then you can just drag and drop it in here, and it uploads it like it would if you're uploading it to your Google Drive. All right, so this is a little bit of a fancy bowl, and I wanted something that had a little bit of detail in it because my illustrations that you may have seen have quite a bit of detail in them. And I also just wanted to create something that was more than just a gradient color with some light and shadow. So I wanted something that had maybe some details, some texture, some contours, that kind of thing. So I like to use photos, and sometimes I'll actually I take a lot of photos and upload them to my Google Drive for reference. I use a lot of self-portraits or just photos of stuff around that I use then as reference to make my illustrations. And I find it just, it's very helpful because I get sort of that natural light and image and shape, as well as it's an image that I've captured from real life. And I like that sort of originality aspect of it. This one I've just grabbed from Google image search. I thought it looked sort of interesting, so we're going to use it today. Now, there are many ways that I could go about illustrating this, but I wanted to show you sort of my chunky vector style that you may have seen in my portraits. What I usually use is the Polyline tool. And when I use the Polyline tool for my portraits, I'll just stick almost exclusively with that tool and create everything. Even if they're circular type shapes, I'll create them with the Polyline tool because they give the whole artwork overall a very interesting style and sort of a low poly simplistic abstract style. So that's what we're going to do with this image as well. And I'm going to break this up instead of doing a speed run through, like you may have seen. I've sped up a lot of those videos. We're just going to take this piece by piece. So the first thing that I would probably do with this particular illustration is just get the entire silhouette of it knocked out. And I like to zoom in, and when I use the Polyline tool, and basically just make my lines as long as I can make them without making them too long. For example, you see here, if I go way out here, I either start clipping into the image or I'm way off that edge there of the bowl. So I'll keep my lines as much in here as possible while making them sort of as long as possible. And sort of my in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking, how few nodes do I need to plot to get the gist of this image? And so that's what I do, sort of carefully going around this entire thing, or not so carefully, depending on how you look at it. But you see I am zoomed in quite a bit. And the shortcut keys for zooming in and out are you hold down Command and Option, and then hit the plus and minus keys. Plus to zoom in, minus to zoom out. On a PC or Chromebook, that's Control Alt plus or minus. This is kind of interesting. I know that this is maybe just a little divot, but I think I want to make it a little chip, and so I can just do what I want. And that's something else that I often do, is rather than trying to recreate this photo, I'm using this photo as a reference, and I am interpreting it my own way. And so often I'll add details that are not there, or I will ignore details that are there. I'm just going to keep going around. Just want the overall basic shape. By the way, I'm also just using the scroll wheel. I use a mouse, and I find that easier for me than a trackpad when doing stuff like this. Using the scroll wheel on the mouse to scroll up and down, and then if you hold the Shift key as a modifier while you're scrolling, you can scroll left and right. So it actually makes it pretty quick and easy to navigate when you're zoomed in. So I want to scroll to the left to see more of this image, and if I hold Shift, I can do that, and then I let go of Shift to scroll down. Okay, and then I want to meet up with my original point here. And right away I see I want to fix this little bit here, so if I double click, you see that I can now edit these nodes, and I'm just going to spread these out a little bit better. Okay, I like that. And of course I don't want the stroke on there, so I'm going to make that transparent, and the fill color I'm going to make black. So you see already, if I just wanted the silhouette, I've got a really great silhouette, and when I zoom out, I really don't see this real jagged edge. I get the whole gist of this bowl as a rounded object, which I think is pretty interesting. So you can do a lot with that Polyline tool. This would already make a good icon or symbol for something. But let's take it further. Let's add in some details. The light that's hitting this is primarily from the left side, and as you see, it wraps around here. It gets darker over here. Then there's some reflected light over on this right side. There's also some light that's bouncing off the surface, whatever it's sitting on, and hitting right about here. And so I'm just kind of analyzing this image a little bit and seeing what parts that I want to really sort of duplicate and maybe even exaggerate and what parts I want to simplify more. I want to get the bowl part of this image right away, and I think that's the part I'm going to do next. So I'm going to zoom in again just a little bit, back to my Polyline tool, and I'm going to start. I'm going to start with sort of the edge of this, the band that goes around the lip of this bowl. So this piece that's in the foreground here. Basically, I want to create some shapes that more or less separate the different forms that are represented in this object. So I do this just kind of piece by piece. And I'm going to select the dark gray here. I can tell that there's parts of it that are lighter than that, but for now, I'm going to grab it and move it right on over. And this is how I do most of the time. I just do a little piece at a time, grab this image, and just having that, see how that makes it look like a bull? So I can see the lip of this and the contour with just one simple shape. Kind of amazing how little you need to really make something look like an object, not just a black shape. So let's do a little bit more. So I can see the light that kind of wraps around the back of this, again, making out the contour of this bowl. And this is really just where some of the artistic interpretation happens, and some of my style starts to come through. And I don't want it to be, super detailed, and I don't want to worry about it too much. Part of what I like about using Google Drawings is this kind of loose effect that I get. You see here I made that little chip, and so I'm going to bend the shape kind of around that. Okay, just like that. And I'm just going to move it behind that first shape. Even though they're the same color, I can still see where that is. Okay. And we start to see that light bending around the back part of this. And there's some on this side as well. Let's go and get some of this. Actually, so one of the things here I'm going to exaggerate is the inside of this bowl. So it's really, I think, helpful to think about projects like this more as building blocks. You're just building shapes on top of one another rather than drawing lines and having, washes of color and that kind of thing. I also hold shift when I'm moving this stuff over, and that helps me line it up. If I hold shift and then start to drag, it snaps it to that axis. So if I hold shift and start dragging up, now I can't move it left or right, only up and down. Okay, so let's just position it here. And you can also nudge it with the arrows and holding shift and using the arrow keys, nudge it, I think just like one little pixel at a time. Whereas without holding shift, I think it's like 10 pixels, something like that. Okay, so you can start seeing some things here going on. Now this band here, especially at the edges, I can see is much lighter. And so I'm going to overemphasize that right here at the lip. And at the same time, I can actually pull in some of these little details. So there's a kind of a bevel here going on. And so I'm going to try to emulate that a little bit. Okay. always get rid of my stroke. I'm going to select the next lighter gray. Holding shift, move it over, line it up. Okay, see how that's working? Back to my Polyline tool, do the same thing on this side. So the light hits that lip really nice and gives it a hard edge. Since right now there are no gradients supported in Google Drawings, this technique still works really well at sort of a flat style or cell style shading in your illustrations. That's looking good. What I might do now is just zoom in on this, on the stuff that I've drawn out here so far, and do sort of my next lightest color. And I'm just using shades of gray, building them up, going to the next lightest color, and trying to mimic this lighting on the bowl. Just like that. Okay. So that little bit of light right there, especially at the edges, really helps to separate what's in the foreground and what's in the background. And this gray here, I may actually make a little bit transparent so that it is even just a little bit darker than what's in the foreground as well. Yeah, I like that. Okay, now let's build some of these pieces. I'm going to analyze this again. Now you see how there's almost like a how a crack would be, where the object goes in. On the opposite side of that, the light hits the edge where that form has been pushed in. See that? So you get this dark line next to this light line. Something else that I'm seeing here is that these quote-unquote lines get darker towards the center here and lighter right here, and then this one is darker right again at the edge. But what I also see is big shapes here. So I see a big sort of piece of light that's hitting this, that's giving it the form, the whole shape, its form. And I think that I'm just going to do that piece first. So you see where this is kind of gray, a gray gradient hitting this black here. I'm going to get all of that and drag it over. And then I'm just going to make sure, because this is a darker gray, I'm going to move it to the back, which is Command-Shift down arrow. I'm going to move it up until it's just on top of the this overall base shape here. Okay, so that is already, again, giving us some form. Again, it gets lighter right about here. and lighter right underneath here. See how that's really starting to work? And I can do this side over here as well. When you make custom colors, they're added to this strip of colors down here, this little palette, and you can select those custom colors without having to make them again, which is really nice. So with this semi-transparent shape, it's the same color, now just built up on top of itself, which is making it look lighter, progressively lighter. All right, I want to get this little band right here. Basically disappears into the shadow, but you can see it really, really good right at the edges. Okay, and I'm just going to continue on with that color. And let's go ahead and do a little bit more. Okay, so here's something I do quite a bit. I just did a whole bunch of shapes. Now I can drag, select, and then just holding shift, deselect the image. And then I can move all of those shapes right over to the bowl. And then I zoom in, make sure that those are lined up where I want them. Okay, this is really coming along quite well. A little bit more of a splash of light right down in these areas. So again, I'm gonna grab one of these shapes, and as you see here, the fill color changes to that color. Then I'm gonna go to my Polyline tool. What that should do is mean that I don't have to, yep, that's good. I don't have to change it each time. You may have seen that I'll often click off of shapes, and then when I create a new shape, it's sort of just a light blue with a black outline, and then I've got to change the color of it again. So I just select one of the colors that I've used, select a shape that I've used, one of the colors that I want, and that sort of sets it up for me. I like to go quickly, sometimes as quickly as I can um, when doing this kind of stuff. One, because I like seeing how things take shape, and I want to get there as quickly as possible. But it also helps me not think about it too much, not try to be so perfect. I can always go back in and adjust these shapes by double clicking on any of them and moving the little dots around. So for this one, as an example, I actually want to make it a solid gray that's lighter and brighter. And then I can double click and sort of readjust some of these nodes. Okay, and I think I want to have the same kind of edge on this side right here. So I'm just going to have that same color selected and give this edge a nice bright hard edge, just like that. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. Also see right here, it gets quite a bit brighter. And so, again, this is part of the interpreting process. So you're going from something that has texture and gradients and all kinds of stuff going on into solid flat shapes that just are built up on top of each other. But I want to keep adding detail. So that's what I've done. Okay, so you see now that we have sort of a early 90s 3D looking sort of image. At this point, what I might do is just group it all together. So selecting all of it, make sure I don't have the image selected there, and hit Command G, put that into a group. Just so it's sort of my base now. If I wanted to add more details onto this thing, I can, and then group them together as well. But things can get complicated quickly, especially when we don't have any layers or any way of sort of, filtering through what's on top of what other than selecting it. All right. Now, I might like it just like this and having a smooth bowl. So what I think that I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to option drag a duplicate. So just holding option, clicking and dragging to a sort of blank area here. And as you see, I can work off the canvas, and that's why it doesn't really matter when I'm just creating some illustrations what I set up the document as. I can always cut it and then readjust my document proportions or dimensions and paste everything back in. So often I'll just use the default settings, which I think is usually it's just 4:3. I don't even know what it is. Let me see if I go to custom. All right, it's 10 by 7.5 inches. But I don't care about that right now. I just want to make the illustration because I usually use these as assets and pull them into other documents anyway. So I've got the simple one here, and I've just kind of copied it out. Now I can do some more stuff on this one, and I can that way preserve this here if I want. All right, let's add some of these little embellishes here. The first one I think I'm going to add is this one. So I'm going to zoom in even more. Again, I'm just still using the Polyline tool. I'm going to follow this line all the way to where it basically turns all black. And I think that's just fine right there. I find that working in small pieces or relatively small pieces also helps me get the job done quicker because I'm not just sitting there clicking, 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 and clicking. As you saw, just sort of getting that base silhouette. I wanted to be one single shape. And that really was the longest part of this so far. Okay, so you see how that's kind of cutting through there now. And I want to do that other side. Again, I'm simplifying things that I want to make more simple or just easier on myself. And then adding in details or exaggerating the details that I think would look cool. Holding shift, drag it over, line it up where I think it needs to go. And as you see here, basically, it didn't do anything. So I'm going to move this shadow or this dark gray color further up into this shadow so that you can see that little detail, just like that. And I did that by clicking into the group. So I have selected this group. So you see it's still a group. And if I move it now, my little details are going to be off because that's not part of the group yet. But then if you click again on a shape, it'll select that shape. You can double click on that and still edit the individual pieces of that group inside the group, which is pretty cool. All right, so now I want to I think I want to just continue with the black here. And again, to me, these are not lines, these are shapes. These are little bits of light that will eventually make up an entire object. I think it's great when we can sort of break things apart like that and begin to sort of recognize what really are just really primitive pieces, just really primitive shapes. But when you put them all together, your brain will go through its own sort of catalog of imagery and see an object rather than some sort of abstract shape. Okay. So I'm going to select these. I can also just hold Shift and select multiple objects. You see these line up with that top line right there. So I think that's pretty good. Again, I can double click and pull some of these other shapes wherever I would like them. Something I've always loved about vector graphics is it's a lot like sculpting because you can reshape things really easily. Okay, I've got a few more here. This is, by the way, the same technique, the same method, same tools that I use to create the vector portraits. And so creating somebody's face, for example, there's a lot of detail and there's a lot of care that I like to take in trying to capture expression. I love drawing eyes and really making again just the brain see not just an object but a personality. And I think it's amazing that we can interpret things that way, rather than just paint on a surface, or in this case, just digital information on a screen. Uh, our brains will interpret a person, a place, a thing, and also we'll have an emotional response many times. All right. So I think that's good. I'm not going to worry about this one right here because it's mostly just in the shadow here. But what I do want to do is give it that little sliver of light that comes up right next to it. And to do that, I'm just basically going to go through and do the same thing here. I'm going to do the first one on top of the photo. And I'm going to use white, go to custom, and make this very transparent. Okay, I'm just going to pull it over. And the light hits on this side. Now, by making that semi-transparent, which I may make even more transparent. The work that I did to create the overall contour of this bowl still shows through, which is really cool. Really great trick. Okay, so the light on this side is on the left, as we see here, is already working for us here. And I'm not going to go all the way down. I'm just going to go mainly where the light would be hitting, just like that. And I can scroll back over to see my reference. Okay, this one too is mostly on the left, I think. Zoom out and deselect things to kind of see how I'm doing. So we're really seeing this thing start to take shape. This one now starts to go on the right. And again, I'm not going down as far because the whole bowl starts to go into the shadow. Okay. Okay, this side they're still mostly on the left. And even though you really can't tell, I'm selecting this sort of second swatch that looks white. They both look white. I'll show you in a second, though. Because they're transparent, it's really hard to indicate transparent white from white. So I just know which one I created first and then adjusted. And the second one is the opacity that I wanted. All right, so this is, I think, looking fantastic. There's a couple more little details I think that I want to add. Right above this indentation and that transparent white, and right on this side as well. Help bring out those little details on the side there. I could also go in here and see how this one is actually really a lot brighter, and there is a little bit of light just right there. Again, with this transparent white, I can go over things even more, and it's just going to make it more more opaque or more obvious on top of that. So I think that's good. I want to create my little nick here, and since my light is coming mostly from the left, it's going to hit this part of it. So there's my little chip, and I'm going to give even just a little bit more light right there. Okay, so again, just with two small little shapes. I might actually adjust this one, bring it in like that. Okay, I've created this that little nick or crack. All right, again, I'm going to select everything, Command G, group it all together. So now I've got this simplified one, and then this much more complex one. There's one more thing that I'd like to do, and that's kind of mimic this this cast shadow. And so to do that, I am going to create just, again, a big, loose, chunky shape. And I don't care that it's on top of that because I can move things around wherever I want. But I'm going to select black, go to custom and make this very translucent. So I'm bringing this alpha channel all the way down here. And then I'm going to do the same thing again. And I see that it gets darker over here towards the right. And so I'm going to make sure that my shapes overlap that way. Again, because Google Drives doesn't support gradients, this is kind of a neat little workaround. So again, I just did a drag selection, holding shift or then clicking shift and clicking on the photo. I deselected that from my selection and then put the entire shadow shapes into their own little group. Now I'm going to move the photo off to the side and grab this, again, group it together so I'll get the shape, the shadow attached to it now. And now I can change my background color. And this is really neat. I don't have to go in here and make all these different color changes because I made it black and very translucent. It's just going to follow by being transparent black on top of any color. And so every color is just going to basically overlay black on top of. So now I've got this just really great sort of maybe Greek looking bowl. Now I think mine looks a little bit more shiny and maybe metallic compared to the original photo. But there we go. We've got a bowl now that we can copy and paste into another Google document. Lots of like little details and stuff. Another thing I could do is use this in a larger illustration. Maybe I wanted to have a character, maybe a wizard or something, holding a bowl. Now I've got a bowl to use. I could start drawing. Maybe there's some ashes or flames coming out of this bowl. There's a lot of stuff that I can do now, and utilize this as an asset for myself, as well as just a nice illustration by itself. All right, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you get a whole lot out of this and enjoyed videos like this. If you did, give me a like and leave me a comment below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.